Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So a little bit of background on Codemill first. We're a Swedish-based software developer. We've been around 15 years. We're distributed across the Scandinavian market, principally from a developer point of view, but we work with customers worldwide. And as of 2021, we're a publicly listed company on the NASDAQ. So we're known for a range of products and services. We have a media asset management product called Codemill that's now been deployed at Media Prima in Kuala Lumpur as of last year. And we have tools called Accurate Video, which are widely used for what's called the media supply chain, of which I'm going to talk a lot more now. Historically, we were also very much involved in custom software development, so building custom web interfaces for media and entertainment customers, for building custom applications, custom workflows. And we have an SDK, so some of our clients also build their own custom applications for the web browser. So we have a range of clients. We're very lucky to work with a number of the largest studios and broadcasters in the world, sports and news organizations, and a lot of the online video platforms, fast channels, and linear broadcast TV stations as well. What we're seeing, and this is what I'm here to talk about, is the convergence of all of these different forms of delivering content and how to get efficiencies out of that by leveraging the cloud, as well as using your on-premise technology. So really discussing the realities of where we are today in terms of hybrid cloud architectures. So this terminology, media supply chain, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that. It's quite common in the Western Hemisphere talked about, but I'm not sure how well it's been established as terminology here. Can I have a show of hands? Are you familiar with the concept of the media supply chain, or is this a new for you? Nobody knows. Well, essentially what the media supply chain is really dealing with the end-to-end processes and workflows that involve managing, processing, and distributing content, whether it's for your linear broadcast channels, whether it's for your online OTT platforms, or whether you're delivering for fast channels and social media. What we're seeing with the convergence of all these technologies is the need to drive efficiencies, to reduce costs, to do more with less. So what is a media supply chain? As you might imagine, if you've done your live news productions, you've got your crews going out, shooting on set, doing your post-production, now you have a finished master, you may need to deliver that program to a number of different channels, and this is where the media supply chain comes in. But nowadays, of course, we're not just producing our own content, a lot of broadcasters are buying in from external suppliers, external studios. So there's a lot of media that's being produced in-house, but a lot of content that's also coming in from outside. And so you have to go through an ingest process, managing your QC, making sure that the content meets your standards. You have different regulations in different markets, so compliance, censorship may be important for certain markets where content has to be suitable for the different platforms and channels. Ultimately, you then have to prepare it for distribution, and that may involve dubs and subs. So for example, in Thailand, they like to use dubbing, whereas in Malaysia, we prefer subtitles, the same in the UK. So we have to do a lot of localization. And as you create these different versions for the different markets and different platforms, we have challenges in that mistakes can be made. It's very common, QC errors, subtitling problems, compliance issues that haven't been caught until the last minute. So there are often changes that are needed. And that process is really part of the media supply chain. And then ultimately, we're packaging it up for distribution. So different formats, preparing poster images for VOD platforms, metadata that needs to be reviewed around binge markers, so you can have viewers skipping credits if they're watching episodic programs, for example, or where you need to place ad break markers for downstream playout servers. All of these preparation processes make up the media supply chain. So why would I need one? Well, there's a lot of challenges in the industry, as we probably all know. We're seeing demand across content on many, many different platforms now. It's not just TV, it's across devices, it's mobile, it can be all the time, anywhere in the world. The expectation is that our viewers, our consumers want to watch content, whether it's short-form clips on social media, or they want to watch episodes or movies on subscription channels or linear TV. Of course, now, because we are buying in more and more content, the demand for content has grown, the pressure on the teams that work in these media supply chain, media operations, technical operations teams has never been greater. So we have more content, we have less time, and we can't just hire more people. So the need to drive efficiencies, to look at automation, workflow orchestration, to manage some of these manual processes, try and reduce the amount of error and repetition and frankly very mundane workflows, to try and use automation such as AI to try and speed these things up. These are becoming more and more important. And of course, every broadcaster is no longer broadcasting into their own national location. Everyone is an international media company. You may want to reach international markets. You want to license your content to other partners or to other broadcasters. You're buying in content. So the need to deal with multiple languages has never become more important, especially in Malaysia, of course, where there are multiple languages. So there's a lot of different subtitles to deal with. In other countries, there's a lot of different dubbing that needs to be done. So managing all of those things efficiently is really what's driving this. And of course, viewing habits are changing. As I mentioned, we have declining in linear TV revenues, decline in traditional advertising revenues from TV, but we have growth areas, subscription VOD, maybe arguably saturation of subscription. But now we're driving that with advertising again, fast channels, finding new ways to monetize our content and our archives. And of course, we have the explosion of social media. So we have short-form content, we have long-form content. We have creators that are driving revenues through clicks, through sponsorship, through branding, and the need for the media companies, the traditional companies, to keep up, to be relevant to the newer generations. This is what's driving the need for flexibility and to consolidate and be more efficient with our workflows. The biggest challenge, however, is not technology. We can solve everything with technology, as probably most of us in this room can attest. The biggest challenge is people change. And this is an area for any of you going through these sorts of digital transformations, moving from traditional linear broadcast on-premise to hybrid workflows to needing to deliver content to different channels. It's not just buying new technology, putting it in a rack, or spinning it up in the cloud. It's actually helping to drive change through enabling people change, so transforming the way you work to be more efficient, to make those teams to be able to do more work with the time they have available. So how do you build a media supply chain? Well, you need to hire some subject matter experts. Now, they may be in-house, you may need to go out of house, you may need to find consultants, but you really need to find experts who can help you with that transformation journey, because it is a long-term journey. It's not something that you can do quickly. You shouldn't just lift and shift your technology to the cloud and think you've solved all the problems. So you need to find the right people who can help. Project managers, solution architects, DevOps teams. If you're starting to embrace the cloud, you need that expertise. It's not something that you can just train people up in overnight. And you need buy-in, of course, from the top down. So of course you have the CFO, you have the C-suite. These people need to be part of the journey, but you also need to bring your team leaders, your champions internally, the heads of departments, and especially your users. Because if you force technology on users, they'll walk away. They won't be happy. If you make their work harder by forcing technology change on them, then you get pushback and you can get difficult challenges with people. So this is where change management is important. Taking a user-centric approach is the way to be successful to adopt the cloud. Because there is no end-to-end workflow out of the box, you can't just buy one product from one company or one suite of applications and you've solved all of your problems. You need to work with multiple vendors, multiple partners. You need to pick the best of breed. And you need to be user-centric. You need to focus on the needs of the operators, the media operations teams, the technicians that are actually going to be doing the day-to-day work. Because they're going to be working in the browser increasingly, whether it's with TVU, whether it's the Viz-RT technologies, or whether it's the media supply chain. The technology is moving from the desktop, it's moving from Windows servers, it's moving from legacy on-premise infrastructure to browser-based workflows, where you can customize the user interface, you can make the user experience elegant and intuitive and easy to use and fit for purpose. And traditionally in the technology industry, we're all used to just buying a piece of kit and saying, use that server, use that transcoder, use that QC machine to do the work. Whereas now we can actually design things that are fit for purpose and are easy and elegant and intuitive. And of course, in the cloud, you can scale. So you can work from anywhere. So from a user-centric point of view, we talk about the user experience. And what is that? Well, it starts with research. It starts with discovery. It starts with engaging with your users and your teams to understand their pain points, to understand the challenges that they have, and then to start to ideate on that. So look at ways of improving the workflow, perhaps finding new tools, new efficiencies that you can use, and ultimately coming up with designs, customizations if necessary. But if you can buy software to solve specific problems, or you need particular pieces of hardware that solve those problems, you should buy those things. It's a buy and build world. It's not either or. Typically, you will want to try and buy 80% of your technology off the shelf. So choosing your different vendors, making sure that they integrate, making sure they have open APIs and can collaborate together, and then you look at what you need to build as custom. So that transformation journey, it's continuous. It's no longer done. We're no longer buying 5 years' worth of CapEx infrastructure, putting it in a data center and thinking, right, I've solved all my problems. Digital transformation is continuous, it needs continuous innovation, and it needs continuous improvement and delivery. As I mentioned, no vendor has the whole workflow, so you are going to be working with multiple vendors. You are going to be collaborating. You are going to be working with companies that may appear to be competitors on paper one week, but the next week they may be collaborating on a project together for a customer's needs. Ideally, you want to have out-of-the-box integrations. TVU, Viz, they both mentioned how many integrations they have with different partners. This means that you're buying things that don't need to require customizations. But of course, there's always going to be that 10% left, which may be unique to your business, that may be particularly ways of working that may have always been that way, or particular limitations that you have that you need to work with. And maybe you should do some customization to try and solve those needs. But what you shouldn't do is try and resolve 100% of all of your problems, because the last 10% is pain. So you really want to try and buy as much as you can, build the things you have to, and try and let go of some of those very, very small, niche, challenging requirements that maybe there are better ways of working. And this is where being user-centric comes in. Challenging the way things have been. Why have you always done it that way? Oh, because that's the way it's been, or that's the way we were taught, or that's because the technology limited us before. So you can look at reevaluating your ways of working and finding newer technologies that may be more efficient. So when it comes to cloud services, congratulations to Malaysia, you now have your own cloud data centers and AWS region, which is fantastic. This is going to drive adoption of the cloud. It's going to mean you can start to benefit from the scalability, the security, the performance, leverage things like AI to be able to use the cloud for long-term archiving of multi-petabyte archives rather than having to buy huge legacy CapEx-based hardware infrastructure. These are the trends that we've seen in other regions that have been using the public cloud. But it also gives you freedom of choice. You have more and more partners that you can leverage for different areas of your workflow to improve. So you're not just tied to one particular vendor anymore. You could choose different transcoding vendors, for example, whether it's premium content and where you want the best of the best, or whether it's some archive content that's 20 or 30 years old and you're not going to pay for a premium transcoding service. You can use something that's more affordable and more lower cost ultimately. So that freedom of choice, that a la carte approach to being able to pick and choose different vendors. And maybe you'll choose some vendors and a few years later they may not be the best vendor anymore. There may be new technologies on the market and you can start to leverage those newer partners as well. And of course, ultimately, when you go on this journey, you need to be able to be responsible financially. So you need to look at your key reporting, your KPIs, what's the return on investment, where can we make the efficiencies? Ultimately, these are the things that are going to drive the changes and ultimately justify these technology and people changes. Breaking data down into silos. Again, there are lots of legacy asset management systems, some that were designed to work with broadcast, others that are being used by digital teams. There's news systems, there's rights management systems. We have pools of data, we have pools of metadata scattered across these broadcasters and media brands. The need to consolidate and bring everything together into one data lake or one large pool to be able to manage that content and to be able to enrich it and ultimately monetize it is key. So again, this is a key part of digital transformation. Refactoring and migrating from legacy systems, as I mentioned, avoiding lift and shift. Trying to find more efficiencies. Where can we do more with less? Rather than having to buy CapEx, we can start to leverage Opex models. So we pay as we go, we pay as we grow. And these are reasonable costs that we can examine. Of course, now that we have to do more and more work in less time and probably with fewer people, we need to start looking at AI. So how can we speed up some of these workflows? How can we automatically transcribe, translate? How can we summarize content automatically without having to manually type it in? How do we find good locations for ad breaks? Because we're dealing with lots of adverts and lots of ad breaks in our content in order to monetize it. Where can we place binge markers to skip opening and closing credits in episodic content, for example? These are all things that AI is pretty good at. So you can save minutes per asset by leveraging some of these AI services. But of course, there's always going to be a human in the loop at the end of it to make the final decisions, the final checks. As I mentioned, consolidation. But also, as we've seen with the cloud, there are very few customers who can be all in cloud. Most of our customers today, they're on-premise, and to some extent, they're moving towards the cloud. So the need for hybrid cloud is going to be here for quite a while. So keeping high-resolution media on-premise with your newsroom systems, with your studios, where the media is actually there, high-res, where your users may be, but you may have distributed users working remotely as well. So being able to leverage proxy workflows, using live streaming through the cloud, for example, these are really where you can get the benefits of having a hybrid operation. And what does a real media supply chain look like? So moving beyond the theoretical. So this is a project that Codemill has been involved with Paramount for several years now. So this is taking multiple different regions around the globe, standardizing, consolidating, and managing all of these different teams from beginning to end, from the ingest process to QC to compliance to preparation of content and ultimately distribution. So the need to work consistently so that teams can follow the sun. So work can start in Europe, move across to the US, then into Asia Pacific, continuously handing off work to be more efficient, to do more with less. So working in the browser, being user-centric, designing interfaces that are fit for purpose, that are not, they don't look like a spreadsheet, which is, I think, what so many people are used to seeing in the media industry, is working with spreadsheets, working with emails. Those are business applications. They're not designed for media workflows. So having suitable user interfaces that are easy to understand, that show us exactly what we need to see, but can also drive automation in the background. That's really where the power of the cloud, the power of web browsers, the need for workflow orchestration and automation, all of these things can be done so that the users can focus on the work that they need to do and nothing more. They don't have to click around in different interfaces. They don't have to have multiple browser tabs open or multiple applications open. We're all dealing with these in our day-to-day lives. I have 50 tabs open on my web browser on any given day. It's not ideal. Thankfully, I don't work in the media supply chain. But if I did, I would want to have one user interface where I can see and work with all of my content, my tasks. So this is the different interfaces that the teams at Paramount use to manage the ingest process, the QC process, their archive to see what they have available to license, but also what's missing. So if they're going to license Top Gun Maverick to Media Prima, they need to know whether or not they have the Malay subtitles, the Chinese subtitles, or the English subtitles. And if they don't have those, then they need to order those in from a localization company to make that content ready for Media Prima. So this is all about not only what's in the archive, but what's missing. So looking at the avails, what they can license, and what they need to order in to fulfill a deal with a customer or a partner. Ultimately, they work with many different partners, hundreds in fact, their own channels, their own OTT platforms, but also different broadcasters all over the world. So managing all of the different deliverables to see easily what they need to deliver. And finally, and this is one of the big pain points, is transforming metadata. So one OTT platform will require a 50-word summary of an episode. Another platform will maybe have a 75-word summary. Now, today you would have to manually edit that metadata to make it suitable for the different platforms. But now you can start to leverage Gen AI to automatically transform that metadata and re-summarize it for different platforms. So again, using AI to drive efficiencies, to reduce the amount of manual effort so that work can be done more efficiently. And finally, when the content is ready and prepared, it can be delivered to the platforms where the final checks are made. So overall, this is really what a media supply chain looks like, a modern media supply chain. So thank you for everyone.
I'd absolutely agree with that. I think there's a lot of the onus is on the vendors. You know, yes, we have the luxury of working with some of the largest media organizations, but we are also learning as well. We're working very closely and collaboratively with these large organizations on big tentpole events like the Olympics or big news organizations or big studios, but that learning that we get can help to improve our products, to make them more, more fit for purpose, to make them more standardized, to take things that are quite hard to do as bleeding edge or cutting edge technology, but to make those into affordable products that can be used for smaller broadcasters, customers with less experience in those areas. And it is absolutely about us helping to educate the industry, but also, if we've solved some of these problems for big customers, then the onus is on us to make it sensible and affordable for the smaller customers to be able to benefit from that. One thing around the cloud especially is because it's an Opex model, you can start out small, you can test, you can fail fast, you can try different things out, and it's not going to cost you huge amounts of investment. In the traditional way, we'd have to go and buy, a $500,000 piece of hardware to try something out. You can't do that anymore. So you can try out with, AWS credits. Other cloud providers will give you the ability to try things out on those cloud services. You can start at an affordable level. You can learn from those things as well. The other thing around AI, and I'm sure we've all seen this in recent years, is AI started out being very generic. It would give you very generic data. It would be a closed black box system. You don't know what it's been trained on. It might transcribe English or British English like my accent, or Australian English, but it's going to do a terrible job of a Scotsman trying to speak English. So what we're seeing is the AIs are getting better and better and more niche and dealing with different...
Saying an Irishman there.
Yeah, and the Irish. I mean, it's getting, national dialects and some of the, less well or less widely adopted languages. We're seeing the AIs become more and more accurate. We're seeing them being more tailored for niche use cases and more fit for purpose for this industry as well. So, the maturity of the technology is trickling down via the cloud, and you can try these things out and you can see where the benefits are without having to spend huge amounts of money that you might have had to traditionally do 5 or 10 years ago.
So I'd like to thank and a round of applause for all of these people who all traveled a long way to be here to give you information. So I think thank you very much, all of you, for making it here.